This is the trailhead that you would take to get to the Moon Ridge Trail and the Indian Creek Trail. This is right out of the upper parking lot, and we're going to head down the steps to the sign at the bottom. Okay, we're looking at the sign to the Indian Creek Trail to the left. This is not actually the Indian Creek Trail, it's still the Moon Ridge Trail. But this is the trail that we'll take to the Indian Creek Trail. And in all actuality, my hike description calls this Indian Creek Trail because, hey, this is the route you take to get to it. And there's really nothing else but the Indian Creek Trail to the left. Okay, our trail starts out somewhat shaded, although it's cloudy today. With nice lighting. There's actually some water down in this little canyon below here. It's runoff through the neighborhood up above. One thing worth noting on most of the trails in the canyon area of Wildwood is poison oak. And this is a lot of poison oak down below there. Okay, after that brief stretch down in the wooded area, we're up above in the mesa, and we're going on a short little trip along the edge of the mesa until we drop down into Indian Creek Canyon. In late spring, the prickly pear cactus are in bloom, and since we had a very wet winter this year, the prickly pear cactus is particularly nice. There's lots of blooms building up here, but something to notice is that what's sprouting up behind that prickly pear cactus and through it is a lot of poison oak. This is a nice view of Indian Creek Canyon from above on the mesa. We will be down in that very shortly. Okay, we are just about to enter into the canyon here. We're at the top of the Indian Creek Canyon Trail, and down we go. One of the beautiful things about the Indian Creek Trail is all of the plant life. We're looking at an oak tree right now, and a toyon bush down below here, and right over here is a sycamore. There's also black walnut trees in the canyon and even some cottonwood. The plant you're looking at right here is called a chalk dudleya. It's a member of the Dudleya family, and the reason it's called a chalk dudleya is if you look in the middle there, you have a white chalky powder, and it oftentimes spills out onto the ground. It's a very pretty plant. Okay, our path takes us over a bunch of railroad ties. There's a natural spring that runs under these railroad ties. When these ties were first laid down, they were actually somewhat straighter than this, but they've started to sag from the constant moist soil of the spring below. We're looking up the Indian Creek Trail, but I really wanted to point something out. Down below us is a waterfall that I'm sure you can hear already. The waterfall runs all year round, which seems quite out of place for Southern California, and it feeds a very deep pool. We'll have to walk across this creek when we get down closer to the bottom. We're heading down into the canyon. We're getting a lot closer to the bottom. I wanted to point out across the way, if you see all of the light-colored plants in the hillside, those are all chalk dudleyas surrounded by lots of prickly pear cactus. And then down below we got all of our riparian trees, which are quite prolific and healthy down below. And we also have a lot of poison oak all over the place. You just got to be careful when you're around it. The trail winds its way down these stairs and then heads on down a lot closer to the creek. And as you can see, we are right next to the creek now, and we will stay alongside the creek for the remainder of the hike. Okay, we got a bunch of squawking ravens nearby, but I wanted to point this area out. This is the one area where if we've had a heavy winter rain and there's a lot of runoff. You might get wet because you got to hug alongside these rocks here to get past this area. This isn't the creek crossing yet, but it gets pretty wet. And at the very bottom of the railroad ties, you can see some water on the rocks. That's because there's a spring feeding that area. So you just have to be a little more cautious and don't be careless over the rocks and slip and maybe twist an ankle. I thought it would be neat to show this panorama of the creek. Okay, this is our creek crossing. We got a bunch of strategically placed stepping stones. They're actually man-made, if you will. As you can see that they're stones inlaid in concrete. But we're going to step across the creek over these stones. Okay, after crossing the creek, I strongly advise you stay on the left side of these railroad ties because on the right side is a lot of poison oak. Nice little waterfall along the Indian Creek Trail. Okay, we're looking uphill at the lower canyon part of the Indian Creek Trail, and down below is the creek. And then here's the lower part of the trail. We're near the end of the trail. This is pretty much what you see. A lot of trees. It's very peaceful in here. This is not a very busy trail, so you should have it all to yourself if you're lucky, and if you're not, you probably won't be sharing it with many people. It's short, it's sweet, takes you right down to the Wildwood Canyon Trail, and you should be able to enjoy other trails after you get there. Okay, here's a nice mature cottonwood tree near the end of the Indian Creek Trail. This area, as seen from the Indian Creek Trail, is known as the Indian Caves. One of the neat things about the Indian Creek Trail and the Wildwood Canyon Trail is that there's lots of wild rose growing along the edge of the trail, and it's in bloom right now. Well, we've reached the end of the Indian Creek Trail. Hope you enjoyed it.